Nursery is not appropriate for listeners who are under the age of 18. Please listen responsibly and enjoy helping us build an arts scene in the great state of Ohio.
The nursery and all of the trees crossed over the dark, and some old parking lots hold my whimpering thoughts, and I'm on the next train. You and me, can't you see what this means? In the light of a torch, realize nothing is forced, nothing is forced.
Hey guys, welcome to Nursery. This is my friend David Milchick. Tell him who you... And by the way, guys, if you're listening to this, you don't have to know me, you don't have to know him, you don't have to know anybody. This is just like, press play, be like, who are these weirdos from Ohio? What are they doing? That's what this is. So tell them about who you are, what you do.
David Milchick, just kind of a guy who lives around here, working at a Lebanese restaurant, and I do sculpting and work in the arts just on my free time. So
That's cool. Film, right? That's the big
yeah, my film is my big thing, and I mean nothing super successful at the moment, and just kind of moving right along with that. But yeah, I've known Lee here for God, how many years now, off and on? Like, just
wow,
kinda,
yeah, probably since 05, 6, 7. When did you start at a Lebanese restaurants? We're talking about is like a connecting force between all of us.
Yeah.
In Ohio. But when did you start working?
Oh, I don't know. It's been my wife Danny. I met,
Like 6.
reconnected with her probably about 6 or 7 years ago, and I was at Aladdin's just a little before that, so probably about 8 years now, I think. So
Okay, that sounds right.
I think about so.
I know about 8 years ago, I was coming out of a phase where I had just, like, a few years prior to that, lived in a little place we called The Flat in Latonia, Ohio, with 3 to 4 friends. You know, that's how it is when you're young.
Yeah.
It's like with X amount of friends that rotated in and out, and I was one of the ones that rotated out, and our friend Billy rotated in. And
Big Billy from
yeah, and I actually just recently saw him. We played a house show in Columbus, and he was there. And but yeah, but I was coming from that, and then my friend Pepe got hired there, a few friends got hired there, and then all of a sudden, just like a few more years go by, and everyone are adults. You know, like everybody was just like, hey, meet this person, they play in a band, this person makes movies, this person goes to lots of shows, that's you. Like a lot of us go to lots of concerts and stuff. And,
Yeah.
And they're all of a sudden, I just was kind of like, wow, man, all from kind of basically art in some way, we made a lot more friends and a lot of people and stuff like that. And the reason I call it art, even if you work at a restaurant, is because, you know, kind of, I don't want to act like we're in New York or LA. It's not like there's a bunch of like waiters who want to be actors here.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a lot of artists who are working jobs here.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's kind of cool that, you know, everyone came together like that. It's a little weird for me, like you said, you coming from Latonia, and like I live nearby in Salem, Ohio, and like none of us really knew each other. Like a lot of you guys knew each other, but me somehow, like, I was just outside of that bubble where I didn't know you guys, but like we were around the same people like all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of
coming from like East Palestine, Columbiana, it's surprising we didn't know even more people. Yeah.
So,
But so tell me a little bit more about like if we're on that idea of artists working, what is it that you pride yourself on as far as like making movies?
as far as like what I pride myself on in making movies, I don't know. I mean, I've just had that drive. I mean, I wouldn't say it's been a lifelong drive. I mean, when I was a kid, I loved movies, specifically like horror movies, and out of that, like, I got really, my uncle got me into, I guess my uncle and my dad both got me into different facets of like movies and like appreciation for them, and I grew up on a lot of older stuff, and in turn that got me into like actually monster model kits, and then that got me into sculpting, which kind of led me back to wanting to do the filmmaking thing. So it's kind of, in a roundabout way, it's all just kind of been cycling around and like building back up to the filmmaking thing. But I would say the last 10 10 to 12 years of my life has been like wanting to do this and just building my skill set to the point where I can do this and do it well. So
yeah, that's cool. Do you have a bunch of stuff on like shelves that are like bits and pieces of things and stuff like that, or how's that work exactly?
A lot of that stuff, I mean, there is that, like as far as like sculptures I've been working on, some of that stuff is just a lot of that stuff I would say is just kind of preparation. So that's stuff that's not really related to the actual thing that my projects that I want to get off the ground. A lot of that stuff is still confined to notebooks and just in my mind and just kind of there, and that it's kind of just gestating right now. So
a lot of it is stuff that like you would either, that if you got some chance to like make this straight through full length and go to some small theater and be like, we're premiere, you'd use those as notes, not shots that you'd transplant. You'd be like, I got this as like my like demo of what I want to do. Maybe I'll throw it in because if it's a good idea, if it fits something else, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, and the writing process for me has been like just kind of narrowing things down over the years and like really getting, like there are a few different ideas that have kind of been like started as one thing and then just morphing along, over the years, and like another idea will come into play, just fall into place, and then that'll be, maybe that belongs here in this other project, and maybe this thing can be something else, and just kind of growing each thing. So it's a pretty organic process, but like the things, like I said, a lot of the designs and things like that, as far as the actual things, like since I do the sculptures and things like that, a lot of those are just things I've done based on other people's work. So I mean, like things I have an appreciation for. So I mean, like I'm a big fan of the films of Frank Henenlotter, and if you guys aren't familiar with him, check him out. And I mean, he's done a lot of great things. Basket Case, Brain Damage, which is one of my all-time favorites, and other classics like Frankenhooker. But
nice.
But yeah, check him out. And I mean, his movies have been a big influence on me. But before that, I mean, it goes back to like classic monsters and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't really know where to go.
Do you mean like when you say classic monsters, and you're talking about sculpting more, right? Are you talking about like, I'm very uneducated as far as film goes, like The Blob and Frankenstein's monster?
Yeah, that kind of thing. That'd be a good example of classic monsters, things like that. And I mean, growing up, I was a big Godzilla fan, so that's another thing, and I mean, that was a big part of my childhood, just growing up with that as an influence there.
Well, that's kind of neat. So your main thing, your big thing is sculpting, right? That's what you would define yourself as, like, your most, like, if move forward the most with and things like that?
Based on, like, what I've currently done. Like as far as the filmmaking end of things go, it's like, that's kind of where I want to be. And like, I'd like to get to the point where I'm comfortable calling myself a filmmaker, but right now it's generally, just like until I take that leap and start working on this stuff more, other than just gathering equipment and building on ideas, I consider myself a writer and a sculptor first and foremost before a filmmaker. So
that's a huge leap to take too. I mean, like I listened to this one podcast, Jay and Silent Bob Get Old, and it's just like a goofy, and it's the cool thing because it's a sobriety-based podcast where it's like an intervention podcast, and the one guy's getting sober and blah blah blah. But Kevin's always like, you guys can make movies, just go out and do it. And he's like, not really, maybe go out and do a podcast. He's like, it's really expensive to make movies, and and you probably have that mindset, because I know another guy in a East Palestine thing called Bacon Avenue Productions. His name is John Palo, and maybe if you and him combine forces someday it would happen. But even with all that, it I don't know, it's daunting.
It is a lot of work, and I mean it's but before I get too sidetracked, I did want to comment. It's funny you should mention the Kevin Smith podcast. I actually got to see him a couple years back. He wasn't a huge fan of the movie, but Jay and Silent Bob's super groovy cartoon movie. Okay. He was in Pittsburgh, and I'm a big fan of him and Jason Mewes, and like
I heard that podcast from that showing. Yeah. Did you ask a question or anything?
I did not ask a question. I was
going to be like, did I hear you in the podcast?
No, I'm more of a sit down and shut up kind of guy. So
I probably wouldn't ask anything either.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I need to add something. You know, if I'm not adding to the conversation, you know, I could jump in and like be like, oh, hey, how was it doing that? You know, but I feel like most of my questions are just going to be things that either somebody else is going to be asking or they've been asked so many times.
That's
before,
how that podcast was. It's like the Q&As after that tour were a little hard to get through. I got through them and they were still good, but it was like somebody asked about Clerks 3 like 80 times.
Yeah, and that's like kind of, I feel like if I'm going to bring something up, it had better be something, you know, that somebody might not think of, you know, and, you know, I'd genuinely like to know. And I mean, a lot of people, I think, ask stuff that they know, you know, and I mean, it's just, and not like a critique there or anything like that, but they just want a chance to talk to that person, you know, and just say hi and say their piece, you know.
They're always like, will you sign this? And whatever. Yeah. But I don't really care about having somebody sign it. Not often have I been super excited about if I've gotten someone to sign something. Like, it's cool, but I don't care. That, like you say, you're probably there to enjoy whatever. But that's cool. See, having somebody like you on this podcast is good for me, because as much as I'd like to act like I'm educated art-wise and music-wise, I spend so much time creating it, doing the things kind of that you're talking about, where I have a bunch of shelves of demos and things that I'll never use, but I can use on this stupid podcast. You know, like the things I can use little odds and ends from recordings that we'll never use in a release or whatever. It's like works here. So maybe down the line, if you ever do a podcast, or B, just some weird media thing where you release things, maybe it's useful to do those things in short runs, small forms, rather than, okay, I got a ton of big equipment, I got to rent out a theater, I got, you know, you can do that, but is there anything you want to plug for listeners? Is there anything anyone can find of yours that you would say, like, here's the jumping off point to David Milchick, or is there nothing really available?
Yeah, I'm not a big internet guy. I mean, when I'm on the internet, I'm kind of lurking there, you know, like I'm not super into, you know, posting stuff. But I mean, at the moment, you know, not really. It's like whenever I do get around to posting something, it's usually kind of regrettable on my part. It's kind of like, I'll be like, I'm working on this thing, you know, and show a little bit of a work in progress or something like that. And I never really follow up. So it's kind of like, I'm just kind of, you know, like I always have the best intentions of being like, follow me while I do this and see it to completion, you know, and usually that one post is about as far as I'll get. So anything I have on the internet is kind of just a very early stage, or, you know, but I'm working on getting a portfolio together and starting up a website. So soon there will be some things up, and you know, you guys can check out some of my actual completed works and things like that. But it's been a problem for me, and I mean, something I just kind of got to get over. And just,
well, that's cool. I mean, I'm the opposite of you. I overshare everything. I promote the hell out of myself, and to each his own. But in being from the mindset I am of whoring out material, I'm excited because if down the road you put up a blog, you put up a this or that, it'll be from this point that somebody will jump off. Like, let me know if that happens, because then on this podcast I'll say it, because I'll be like, hey guys, he's kind of erased from the internet overall, except for this thing that I did with him on this podcast. So maybe go check this out. So no pressure. I mean, like, it's all the more interesting for somebody to hear someone who's almost anonymous on the internet. Just because you're probably more. You're definitely not an everyman. You're very unique. But maybe there's a lot of people who are like, I want to do this. But I haven't. And you have done certain things, sculpting. And then I want to get into music. You've been to like a million different really sweet shows. Tell me maybe your top 1, 2, 3, 4, like the craziest, best shows you've been to as far as, you know, concerts go in this area. Or
well, I'm going through high school. I was big into industrial music, and still am to an extent. For those who aren't, you know, initiated into like what that is, I guess the most well-known example would be a band like 9 Inch Nails. You know, that's a good example of an industrial band. But some of my favorite shows have been in that genre, and I would say favorite shows, like all-time favorite shows, I count Gary Newman as one of them.
That'd be good.
He put on an amazing show, and that was just a year or two ago, but watching him, I mean, he kicked ass, and it was just such a solid show, and he was a thrill to watch, you know. So I mean, I'm trying to think of aspects of the show that I could talk about, but it was just nothing short of amazing. But other ones, there's kind of an industrial supergroup called Pigface, which kind of been inactive as of late, but always been like a rotating cast of participants. And back when I was in high school, went to see them, and I can't even think of the club name, but the Gary Newman show, by the way, was at the Beachland Ballroom. And if anyone's in the area or passing through, like, if there's a show at the Beachland Ballroom, support them. They're one of the best venues, probably my favorite venue. And I'm not a big Cleveland fan, but that venue pretty much, single-handedly redeems Cleveland for me. The Beachland's a great place.
And Tavern, right?
Yeah.
Tavern's really nice. I saw Sam Goodwill there. And
and it's just a super, super wonderful place. I mean, there's great food up there, and I'm not associated with them in any way, but this can be a plug for them. It's just great food and like cool vintage shop downstairs, and actually like two venues. You got the bigger ballroom, and you have the tavern side, and I've seen great bands in both sides, and it's just a great place. But back to the Pigface thing, they were when I saw them in high school. God, that was probably about 2001, 2002, I think. So, been well over a decade, but that was just a great show. So, I mean, they definitely weren't as wild as they were before I got around to seeing them. I mean, their stories, just amazing shows, they put on, and just fire everywhere and all kinds of stuff like that. But I mean, it was still just a great experience seeing them, even that late in the game for them. But kind of after the prime of when everyone was really into industrial music as a whole, it's a smaller group of fans now, I think. But
yeah, definitely. And those guys have gotten softer, right? Like I'm a pussy. When I hear like 9 Inch Nails once in a while, their ballad type stuff that's going down these days, once in a while, I'm more into that now too. So I think I've fallen out of the trend as much as a lot of people have.
Yeah,
I love the stuff when I hear it, and I don't know if you're like this, but I usually tend to prefer the concerts that are a little bit loud and rock and roll and industrial, even if I'm not like hearing the CD in my car on the way.
Yeah.
You like those rock and roll, like those louder shows, as opposed to going to see somebody who's doing like a ballad on a piano. Sometimes that's great, but you've gotten to like a handful of Guar shows. Right?
Oh yeah.
So that's just like energy, like that's gonna be an energy.
And Guar's a great, and I mean, as much as I do like, the louder shows and stuff like that, typically at concerts, I'm not a very active guy, I go to a lot of shows and
just stand there and shut up.
Just kind of stand there and shut up
just
and
like
watch.
the film thing.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm usually right up front, like I'm a big fan of that. But yeah, I mean, there's really a variety. I don't want to just kind of pin myself against the wall as far as just being an industrial guy either. But I mean, there've been so many great bands that I've seen over the years, and I mean. I'm a big, regrettably didn't see them because they recently got back together with Brian Wilson and Al Jardine, but the Beach Boys, I think, came passing through, and I was a big fan of them, and didn't get to see, that reunited band.
That was the first time, because I know my brother. Maybe both my brothers and my mom and somebody else went and saw them a few years ago, but it was, not that it wasn't awesome probably, but it was Mike Love and the Mike Love, whatever, studio musician type thing. It was like him and maybe one other dude, and then...
Which, there's a lot of hatred for Mike Love out there, and I don't think that all of it is even unjustified, but, I mean, he definitely had his talents and stuff like that, so I think seeing that would still be... a decent, like, it's nothing I would totally bow out from going to, but just sad that I miss, the Brian Wilson Beach Boys.
That would be
like
great.
That,
and that album was really solid.
Yeah.
They always call half their stuff a return to form whenever that was the first one in 20 years, I think.
Yeah.
But like, it was it was one of their best albums. Like, because no matter how much you love the Beach Boys, most fans admit that every album is this little sampler, and so this is one of the only ones that like flowed through correctly.
Yeah,
and like was like, oh, every song's good, no filler, not that weird little interlude thing. Not that that's bad, but you know. Like, that was actually them. Plus, Bruce Johnston, I think, was involved as well. The guy that was there for Sunflower and Surf's Up in the 70s or whatever.
Yeah.
Tears in the Morning, and he wrote all those, he wrote Disney Girls that was on Surf's Up or Sunflower, whatever.
I
but
think
they're all there, you know.
Disney Girls, I want to say, was...
Is that
Carl. I think Carl... I might be wrong. I might be just...
Yeah, I thought Tears in the Morning and Disney Girls was the ones that Bruce Johnston sang, but then Carl sang the Promised Road and stuff like that. I think whatever it was, those two dominated those years because Brian was in bed or and blah blah blah. But like, no, I don't want to pigeonhole you as just a hard rock or industrial. You're right, and plus, you to put your mind at ease. Regardless of the members of Beach Boys, I hear that all the concerts are ruined by the fans.
Yeah,
because they're all Jimmy Buffett type people.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's kept me away. There are a few bands I've been kept away from, and just really because of the fan. You know, like, and I don't like to say that, but you know, like, we went, and I you know, sometimes it's like, what else are you gonna expect? But we recently went to the English Beat, also at the Beachland, and I'm a fan of their stuff. You know, they're great. British band, like ska, you know, that kind of stuff, influences, but kind of like took a bunch of influences and just kind of melded them and, you know, made some good pop albums and stuff like that. But no, I went to see them and it was pretty much a lot of soccer moms. And I mean, like, what else are you really going to expect? Yeah, it was.
I don't know that band. They've been around forever, so
I mean. They've pretty much been inactive. They really did like 3 albums, I think, and back. So, I mean, that was the end of early to mid 80s, I think, that they really... And then they switched over to a couple of the members started the band General Public and had, like, I think, a hit with that. And that was kind of... But since reformed 2 different beats and kind of tour with selection of members, but kind of half in one band, half in another band, and it's just kind of so they'll tour. And I think a few years ago did a tour called Two Beats Harding is One, where they kind of toured together and each did their own stuff. But I didn't get to see that, so would have been really cool. But
I like that name for the tour.
Yeah, it was a fun name. So, but no, there's just been so many concerts over the years, and I mean, that's, my wife and I, you know, that's one of our big things. We're always going out. Just the other night, we went to Pittsburgh 2 nights ago and saw the Screaming Females, and for those who aren't, you know, familiar with them, they're just a great up-and-coming band, and I think, you know, they show a lot of potential for breaking through into the mainstream, so... And I mean, they're well on their way at this point. But if you guys get a chance, check them out. They just put on a great live show. So
that's cool. The thing about I know a guy named Steve Abel that we used to do Halloween shows for all the time, and I think he's quoted as when he was younger saying, "All I ever wanted to do with my life is have a show in my living room." Yeah. And I draw a line between him and you and some other people I know, because they're some of the few people out there who are quite a bit less self-promoting and more like, check this band, I'm a platform for it. And I think this podcast is a platform for other people, but I like that there's so many people in Ohio that go out and support and go to Pittsburgh, go to Cleveland, go to Youngstown, go wherever. But you know, I think you're a special case because you're like, more so I'd like to plug this venue or this band than myself. Yeah. You know, like it's kind of refreshing. Overall, you know? And
I mean, don't get me wrong, like there'll be a time for plugs. If I get around to my own stuff, you know, I'll come back guns blazing and be plugging away at my own stuff here on Nursery. So
that'd be great. Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like there's a lot of great stuff out there, and you know, I mean, this area you know, where we are in Ohio. It's really cool. I was born in Pittsburgh, and my early years were spent out there, and you know, I love that city, and I have a connection to it. But it's cool being out here. I mentioned earlier my sort of disdain for Cleveland, but you know, that's not really the case. And you know, I mean, I have sort of a love-hate relationship with Cleveland, whereas Pittsburgh, I just absolutely love the place. But
yeah, I think a lot of people kind of feel a little like
yeah,
that, you know? Not that they hate it, because we're all very open-minded being from small town Ohio.
Yeah, no.
But everybody's like, dude, Pittsburgh's beautiful.
Yeah,
You
it's a
deny
gorgeous
it.
city.
Yeah.
But no, the cool thing about where we are, it's like we kind of form a triangle with those two cities, you know. So, you know, each one is about the same distance from us, and you know, it's neat being here, even though it's small town. We're, you know, we almost get double the exposure to certain things, you know, whereas, let's say a band coming through is stopping at just Cleveland or just Pittsburgh, you know, it's not really a stretch for anyone from this area to just be like, oh, well, it's the same drive, you know, we're basically 90 minutes from either place, you know, so it's kind of, you know, like, just like, oh, well, that's Cleveland, I get Cleveland this week, or I get Pittsburgh this week, and, you know, in the meantime, I can just be in my own space and not really have to worry about the traffic and things like that. So I mean,
that's true. Yeah.
So it's not a bad location where we're at, and there's still enough of stuff going on around here that it's you know, it's bearable, you know, for a small town, you know. But yeah, it's as someone who relocated to Ohio, I enjoy it. So
yeah.
But
well, being somebody who's from the same general area as me, what was it like growing up here? As far as like, were you a traditional, like, did you go to church? Did you like have dinner at X time every night? And were you like, you know, like a structured person growing up, like a lot of Ohioans tend to be? Or was it like, I'm creative since 1 year old, I'm doing this kind of crazy stuff all the time?
Sort of more the former than the latter, I guess. I mean, my family always made time for me, you know, to be creative and, you know, encouraged that. So, I mean, I mentioned building like model kits. I mean, a lot of times that kitchen table was covered in newspaper, and I was there with a bottle of glue putting together a model kit or something, you know, or painting. But, yeah, I mean, definitely raised going to church, you know, and, you know, a set dinner time for the most part, and, you know, and I mean, as you get older, that kind of thing's harder to keep up, you know, but, yeah, everyone starts doing their own thing, but yeah, I would say that was kind of my upbringing, just, you know, pretty structured, pretty, you know, but always kind of encouraged to go outside of that and do what I wanted to do and find out what I liked, you know, and, you know, it was never really a big issue, you know, like, I mean, I think some people, and I know some people, especially older people, that are kind of like, oh, you know, horror movies, you know, that's kind of a weird thing, especially for a kid to be into, but I mean, like, I was born in 85, and I mean, boys of my generation, you know, that was kind of, you know, and I mean, every generation, really, you know, it's like, monsters are cool, you know, and that's, you know, but, you know, I mean, some parents, I think, could be, like, weirded out by something like that, but no, mine were very cool about that kind of thing, and, definitely, you know, let me go that way, you know, and I think, proud of the work that I do now, you know, with that.
buddy, I have a friend, Derek Baker, who does a podcast, Comic Shoot, and he talks about comics with his friend from Canada on that podcast because they write for allcomics.com. And he's kind of like, maybe it's a PA Ohio thing, because he grew up watching horror movies from a very young age.
Yeah.
He was into some comics, into, you know, some you know, just monsters and things like that. And like, I grew up kind of sheltered from TV and like junk food, and he like grew up drinking Mountain Dew and watching like Saturday morning cartoons. And like so it's always a bit neat to me because I'm starting that chapter of my life right now. Like I'm like. I'm not the soda thing. I just mean that was something Well, I grew up real healthy, and then when I hit like teens, I was like, I'm gonna drink soda all day. You know, like, but as the dinner got less structured, but my friend Derek, he was desensitized at a young age, and probably now, like you, when watching movies, like our friend Corey Foster as well. He probably is like, cool effects. You know, he's just like, he's not even scared anymore half the time. You know, like, and I'm a wuss. I just started being okay with horror movies. I never watched them. And now, for the first time ever, like, I'm starting to like be like, I need a higher threshold, like it's a drug or something. And I watched Tusk the other day. And things like that.
I still have yet to see that. And I mean, Kevin, I do like that Kevin Smith is getting into horror stuff now, you know, and I think, you know, if he continues developing that, I mean, he could make some really amazing stuff. And I still have yet to see Tusk. I did watch Red State, which
was really great.
I at least really liked the first half or so.
Maybe I'm with you there too.
And I mean, I think the first half was pretty amazing. You know, it just really turned some conventions on its head. And as a male, you know, it kind of. I'm not really. Even since a young age, I've never really been scared by a horror movie. You know, it never really affected me, and
that's amazing.
Like Lee said, you know, like to me, it's always been. I see the effects, you know, and being someone who's a sculptor and aware of that kind of stuff, that's kind of what, you know, like even at a young age, my brain was kind of like, oh, how'd they do that? You know, I wanted to figure out how to, you know, and you know, obviously knew this was all fiction, you know, and this was, you know, this isn't really happening. How can I make that, you know, effect happen, you know, like how could I do that? And just breaking down scenes that way and experiencing the movie from a few different perspectives, you know, like enjoying it as a movie and as a learning experience kind of, you know, for what I would eventually start doing. But yeah, Red State definitely, you know, like as a male, you know, horror movies kind of typically put women, you know, in a vulnerable position. And
yeah, sure. Definitely.
Red State definitely turned that on its head a little bit and made males the target of this aggression, you know, and
that's
it was
true.
It was kind of, I still wouldn't say I was scared by it, but it you know, it was intense, you know, seeing that. And no, I mean, you know, just, you know, I was able to put myself into the movie a little more than I typically can, you know, like imagine myself in the scenario the boys in that movie end up in, you know, and just kind of, you know, oh, that's kind of freaky, you know. So it definitely got some points for that, and from me, and I enjoyed the movie. Like I said, the first half was just pretty amazing, and I think if he had kept going in the direction I think a lot of people expected it to, it might have gotten more acclaim, but he does what he wants to do, and, you know, I respect him for that. You know, you know, it's his movie, nobody needs to like it, you know, and even if I'm one of the people that doesn't think, you know, that's, you know, if that wasn't what I was going to do, it's still what he wanted to do, and I'm not going to bash him for that, you know, that's his movie and how he wanted to do it, so.
And usually people act like that catches more, maybe long-term fans, because I used to kind of not subscribe to what you're saying. I used to be like, if you're doing it for yourself, why are you doing it at all?
Yeah.
And I mean that, I still mean that in the sense that you got to have other people in mind and be wanting to entertain them.
Yeah.
But if you lose sight of like what's inside you to make it at all, if you aim for everyone, you'll get nobody.
Yeah.
So like I definitely feel you on the idea that like, well, if you make your movie, that's all you got.
Yeah.
You're not going to make somebody else's, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So like, But yeah, for years, the only reason I have a hard time with that is for years, Jack and Peppy and I would play with our eyes away from the audience, turned towards each other, like we're in our own little rehearsal while we're on a stage.
Yeah.
And that's okay, but I like when people can walk that line where they're like, I'm most definitely doing this for somebody else.
Yeah.
You know, but I can only do it my way.
Yeah.
You know, like, and that's where he's at, I think, where he's like,
Yeah.
I can crowd please only to an extent, but I'm no way I'm ever going to make that, like, blockbuster, like, action movie. No way. Like, that's just...
Yeah, and I think, you know, his weakest things were really where he was kind of, I think, trying to get, you know, a certain audience, you know, like, where he was kind of bending his... You know, trying to mix what he was capable of, what he wanted to do, with what he thought his audience wanted from him, you know, and I mean, which, you know, I mean, I'm not in his head, I can't say for sure, you know, but maybe it was all just, you know, what he wanted to do and what he thought was going to be cool, and, you know, and more power to him, but, you know, I think his best stuff, you know, and I mean... Granted, I don't know, now saying that, you know, I'm thinking like, oh, maybe, you know, maybe now with some of his current projects, maybe he's catering with that stuff, and, you know, that's just what we like more, you know, but it's hard to say. I'm not, you know, in Kevin Smith's brain, but
I think you're right to an extent of not him panning to anybody, but culturally what's relevant. It makes sense that he's doing stuff that's more grown up and more like... And you know that the third Clerks is going to have a totally different spin, and like,
and
like it's not going to be like Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
Yeah,
that's
and I
like
mean,
Austin Powers. It's just like different now.
Yeah, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back was definitely, in my opinion, like the weakest of his, you know, View Askew universe stuff that he did with those characters. But Clerks 2, I mean, was just a phenomenal movie, and I'm excited for Clerks 3 and Mallrats 2 now he's doing.
Right.
I mean,
which will be so... I can't even imagine what that'll be like. I have no idea what to think of that.
People... an earlier interview he did... he said he wanted to do Die Hard in a mall. So we'll see if that's still what direction he takes with it. But I'll be there watching, you know. But yeah, trying to think from here on out what I wanted to say.
Well, if you're talking movies, I like that you have the threshold where you look at the effects, look at the acting, look at the script, probably.
Yeah.
Like, me and my friend Peppy, I grew up on comedy movies, just comedy, only comedy, always comedy. And, like, we're all big into the movie Hot Rod. We all love, like, stupid, like... bench warmers and all this badly made, like Year One, all on purposely badly made. The critics are always like, that's historically inaccurate. And you're like, no, that's not why they made it, you know, like, and things. And then we watched UHF, seriously, just within the span of like...
Oh, it's a wonderful movie.
Like 3 weeks. I think we watched it about like 30 times in 3 weeks one time.
And I grew up, I was a big Weird Al fan as a kid, and I mean...
Don't you think that's one of his best works, though, for some reason?
Yeah,
like, I don't know why, but
it's been a couple of years since I've seen it, but I've rewatched UHF, and I mean...
It holds up very well, I think. Like, I don't know why, but it does.
And, speaking of, like, comedies and stuff like that, I actually, our friend Jake, and then Lee and Peppy all went to see Dumb and Dumber 2 recently.
Yeah, that was awesome.
In the theater.
I had a good time with that. I don't know what you thought, but
It's funny, I actually recently watched it a second time. At the theater, I didn't really feel like it resonated, you know, with me as much as the original did, you know, and it was a different time, and, you know, I was a lot younger then, but rented it at home and watched it a second time, and it felt like it fit, you know, like it was just kind of like it had always been there somehow, and it's not the same tone. It's arguably the same story as the original one, but the tone has shifted and the humor has shifted. But it just felt like it was the second half of the movie I never got to see, and this is now for me. It's, you know, the rest of it's there, and I really enjoyed it, you know, and you know, it wasn't just like nostalgia or anything, but I've talked to Danny about, like, just that movie, and, you know, like, I don't know why it kind of had such an effect on me, but, you know, I thought it was pretty smart in a lot of ways. You know, like for me anyway, I took away the movie was largely like a reference to like the Three Stooges, like which I think the original one was kind of an homage in his in the Farley brothers' way to the old Three Stooges stuff, and this is their way of doing that slapstick kind of thing. This one I thought was kind of a reference to later Stooges stuff, where like they were getting older, you know, and the humor was still largely the same, but they were recycling a lot of bits and like whole scripts, essentially, like setups for jokes were, you know, taken from older bits, and they just kind of maybe gave them a fresh spin or just redid it with another Stooge, you know, like you know, obviously that third Stooge role shifted a few times with, you know, Curly and Curly Joe and all that, you know, but Shemp, and so there were times where they took that same premise and redid it with somebody else as the third, and you know, it was still good, you know, and it wasn't just about, you know, like, yeah, people could say, you know, oh, they did this already, why am I watching it? But they were the Stooges, and it was still fun to watch, and I kind of took that away from Dumb and Dumber 2, where it's like, yeah, this is really the same setup for everything. Some of the jokes are the same, but we're older and meaner, and this is, you know, this is Dumb and Dumber with two old guys trying to one-up themselves, and it was a lot of fun for that, you know, and I know people are going to blast the movie probably forever, but I liked it a lot, so had a great time with Lee there, so
yeah, that was great to go see it with you guys, and it was cool to go in that group, because we were all the skeptics of like whatever we saw when we were younger type thing, and but as far as their one-ups go, I felt like they did better versions of their original jokes. Like they, like all the things that their little catchphrases that they said again I love that they said them way too enthusiastically the second time, and I loved it. And most of the fresh stuff was really won me over. Like the girl who was their supposed daughter they were chasing, she was really good. I don't know why. Like she was supposed to just be whoever, but she did a great job, and it was so dumb. But my favorite spot, you would never think this would be, but one of my favorite things in the movie is when she is eating something. She's holding a nacho with a chopstick and eating it. It's the dumbest idea, but it made me crack up in that theater. And then my second favorite part is definitely a nostalgia thing. They jump in that stupid shaggin' wagon for like a second, and then it breaks down. And that's their way of saying, we're not going to go totally back to the first one. And like, but also Three Stooges, I have an uncle who's just completely obsessed. He's obsessed. He's got like cardboard cutouts, posters, everything they've ever done he's got. And like, they are good. Yeah, you got a point with that comedy.
I grew up with that, and I mean, that was, my family was in, like, I grew up with, and I mean, it extended to my dad's side of the family and my mom's side of the family. Grew up with a lot of, like, humor, and, like, Laurel and Hardy, Three Stooges, Marx Brothers, Little Rascals, you know, like, Abbott and Costello stuff. And, I mean, I don't know if there's still people growing up that know about that stuff, you know, and I mean, not that all of it was even great. I mean, like, some of it was pretty bad in its time and probably kind of bad now, but, you know, there was a charm to it, and I laughed my ass off as a kid, and I still think all that stuff is funny, and I mean, you know, I grew up with that, and then Mel Brooks, and, you know, like, so, I mean, I kind of appreciate the time I grew up in, that, you know, I was with VHS home video and things like that, and how TV used to be when I was growing up. I could kind of time travel, you know, through different eras of anything, really, you know, like comedy, horror, any of those kind of things. You know, somebody growing up in the 30s, you know, would have had King Kong, Dracula, and Frankenstein, and, you know, as far as like horror things go, but as someone who grew up in like the 80s and 90s, you know, I could have that, and there was, you know, 50 years of things after that, you know, and I could watch things, you know, that came out before that, you know, they didn't have a way to really see that stuff when they wanted to. And I mean, if you lived outside of an area that had a theater, you really couldn't experience that stuff necessarily anyway. Like, I mean, you have to travel somewhere, or if your town happened, most towns did have a single screen theater and you would be able to watch that stuff, but you really couldn't choose like the content you were getting, and yeah, I mean, like, as far as like comedy stuff, I was able to get George Carlin and Richard Pryor along with that, like, as I got older, Cheech and Chong and things like that, so I had years and years of just back catalog of things that, I was able to absorb into, my personality, like, that's just, Weird Al, was brought up, and that's another thing, and Pee Wee Herman and all these, like, great comedic entertainers, and, like, that was, all on tap, kind of, when you had video, and I appreciate having all that, so... But I'm sure it was pretty much the same for you, Lee. Like,
It is, but I kind of think of you as kind of a good example of like a specimen of like an Ohio person who is a fan / like a person who creates things, because you have studied up quite a bit more than me on like knowing the names of things and knowing the stuff. And like I only have a couple little things to throw back to from the Stooges thing, which is I watched that 2010 or 11, whatever version Farrelly Brothers did, and I heard Jim Carrey turn down the part to be the third dude. He tried to gain the weight and got sick or said it was unhealthy or something. Yeah,
because he was going to be curly, and
and I watched that. It was a decent movie, not bad. It wasn't.
Yeah,
great.
I wasn't thrilled with it.
The gags, just the isolated incidents of physical comedy, they did great on. But then it was like,
I would say it was Will Sasso, the Will and Grace guy, and. I really like the guy who played Mo. I think they were great as the Stooges, and I mean, they really nailed those bits, but the movie just didn't really gel for
the story, somehow, if they could have been in shorter form or just done just physical gags in one location, not a bottle movie or bottle episode of a movie. But then also, Will and Grace, actually, with what's his face? Why do I not know the dude's name? Sean Hayes. Will and Grace verbally was that, and Cheers and a bunch of sitcoms were kind of like the verbal version of like what Stooges did. I know a lot of people would hate me for saying that, but like verbally they were theater actors in those sitcoms. It was great because the idea wasn't that they acted like real people. The idea was that they were funny. Yeah. And I think that goes to what the physical gags in Stooges represent, why they should be a mainstay today, is that it's not about like, oh, that's so funny because it's true. It's, no, that's hilarious looking because it's not true. That's why you make movies. I don't want them to be real life. They're movies. And so a lot of times... even like just a weird thing to pull out of the air, but like, what was that stupid movie with The Rock and Sean William Scott? It's just a dumb thing to reference, but
The Rundown.
Yeah, Rundown. Yeah. That is a really good example, weirdly enough, of an action movie that employs ridiculous comedy, where like he's hanging from that. I think one of them's hanging from a rope and the other one's like punching him and stuff, and like they do all these ridiculous things that you would be like that. Definitely couldn't have never been done. But I think that definitely comes from the Stooges. It comes from people being like, okay, just don't make it like, I don't care if it's like, if it can be done in real life. Just like do something that's hilarious or do something that is like wows the audience. And that's where they come from. So I do agree with you as far as like that, even if young people don't know who the Three Stooges are, there should be some vein that you can kind of mainline the physical comedy like that into now, and there's not really.
Yeah, no, and I mean it's something I think could come back, but I mean really now with like YouTube and things like that, I think the landscape of comedy is so different for younger people. I mean, like, and I mean as someone who's no longer a younger person, I guess it's hard for me to say for sure, but it seems like, a lot of comedy now is like mean-spirited. It's kind of like taken on this, where it was always, even Three Stooges were always really kind of mean-spirited, in their way. There was sort of a brotherly love about it, whereas now I think a lot of people derive humor from like making fun of people, and the internet's
themselves really... a lot, right?
Well,
self-deprecating humor happens a lot.
Yeah, I think that, but like thinking about like real life, like people with YouTube and stuff like that, and the videos on there.
Oh, just making fun of like celebrities.
Yeah,
yeah, right.
And I mean, like and it extends to a lot of different things where, you know, popular things are just kind of like real life, you know, somebody being mocked on the internet, you know, and I think people, you know, like, you know, it goes away from like the entertainment, you know, into just, you know, kind of a twisted take on America's Funniest Home Videos, where, you know, this is all here and it's all viewable anytime we want, and we can laugh at someone and feel better about it. And, you know, I don't know if they realize like the divide between real life and, you know, what's on YouTube, and, you know, just, you know, they can poke fun anonymously at a real person instead of laughing at somebody who's making a setup of, you know, a potential real life scenario, you know, like,
yeah,
you know,
that
but
makes sense. Yeah. Cause I heard a Dick Van Dyke interview from just 2 years ago, and he talked about how National Enquirer would print Dick Van Dyke's gonna die because he's like 90.
Yeah.
Instead of like a really happy accident where I think he ran into a co-star and did some cool, you know, like they never report the happy things. The sick side of us always wants to see the person get hurt.
Yeah, and I mean,
instead of see the really fun comedic things that are still happening in somebody's life. Like, and
yeah,
I know you're not talking about Gossip Magazine.
No,
you know,
but
the mentality.
Yeah, no, and it's kind of pervasive just how this has really gotten into everyday life. Just, you know, like seeing everybody's dirt, you know, and just kind of latching onto that. And I mean, I'm guilty of reading. And I mean, I try and override that stuff for myself as much as possible. You know, like when I'm on the internet checking email or something like that, you know, log out and it goes to your MSN page or something, and there's the headlines and stuff like that, you know, and they try and make that stuff eye-catching, but a lot of it is just really mean-spirited stuff about celebrities, and it's people I don't really care about or feel I can relate to in any way, but I'm guilty of clicking on those and reading things, and then I think even worse, scrolling down to see people's comments on these things, you know, and it's like, well, I don't, you know, I kind of find myself like, why am I doing this, you know, and more lately I've been able to just be like, no, I'm not going to give my time to this, you know, like, whatever they get out of it with the hits, you know, which turns into advertising revenue or things like that, you know, it's like, I don't want that to be my news or, you know, what I'm, you know, getting out of my day, you know, if I read something, I'd like it to at least pertain to what I enjoy or, you know, be something good, you know, and I mean, not to say that news has to be always good, but it should be news, I guess. And
yeah, it's not that it always has to be happy. You and I are obviously referencing horror movies and things that are sad, but it doesn't always have to be like deprecating to somebody else to be funny. And like you know, especially somebody like you who's like probably gets deep into a dark horror movie. You probably would like your balancing act to be, now I'm going to watch a comedy that's got some like major chords in it and be a little bit like fun and whimsical and stuff like that. Hey, sorry. Well, actually, I think we made it to a good time mark. Is there anything you want to add or anything you want to say to anybody listening? Because I don't know who they are any more than you do. So if there's any message or anything, not to put you on the spot.
No. Yeah, as far as that goes, I'm not really sure. Yeah, I mean, whoever you are, anonymous listeners, I guess if anybody wants to get in touch with me about anything, if anyone is in the Northeast Ohio area and is interested in this kind of stuff and wants to get together working on anything, I mean, not that I can guarantee that, you know, kind of stuff, but I'm always interested in meeting like-minded people, you know, people who are into horror stuff or into the arts and sculpting and things like that. So, I mean, yeah, if you're into that, I'm sure you can probably email the Nursery, you know, get to the Nursery email and say, hey, you know, how can I get in touch with this guy? And I'm sure Lee here will hook us up somehow, or, you know,
yeah,
at least
you can
pass the
hold me
message
to
on.
that. Hold me to that. And a lot of times I ask people to email clograve@email.com, which is CHLOEGRAVE@gmail.com, and I tend to do that under the idea of if you'd like to donate or sponsor, but more than anything, share your thoughts. I've gotten a couple messages being like, what's the music you use on that? Who is that band? And that's just as interesting to me as anything. So if you're like, who's that dude who was talking about sculpting and movies and Dumb and Dumber 2 with you? Who is that guy? I want to hang out with him. I'd like to do a project with him. I do film myself. or whatever.
Yeah,
or I have a question. Yeah.
Or if you want to give me money,
Or you just want to give him money. Yeah.
yeah, I will put it to good use. No, I mean, hopefully here soon. Like I said, I'll have more of a presence online. Website and a portfolio and my own contact information. That you can get in touch with me, and we can. I'll have things for sale. Hopefully in the next year. But if you ever want to fund a movie or anything like that and make someone's dreams come true, give me your money.
That's a good note to end on. If you guys ever want to fund anybody, and I know other people too, just filmmakers, just direct contact Nursery. Go on thirdclass.net or bullskit.com and click the podcast tab. You'll be able to connect with me, and then I'll connect you with them. Okay, so can you say, "Look, Mom, we're on a podcast," and say something to my mom before we take off?
I've never met your mom, Lee,
but that's okay.
I guess I did at your wedding reception.
That's right.
Yeah, look, Mom, I'm on a podcast.
Yeah, Mom, check us out. Look how cool we are. I hit record on my phone. All right, thanks a lot, man. See you guys.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Nursery. This podcast comes to you from the avenues of Third Class and Bullskit Productions. The podcast is often scored with the music of Third Class and associated acts. So if you like what you hear, go to thirdclass.net. Watch various documentaries which follow us through studios, interviews, and tours. Pick up a copy of our vinyl album, Hymns from Some Small Town, for $15 plus shipping while supplies last, or a digital copy of any of our albums for very reasonable prices. Find us on Bandcamp, iTunes, Amazon, SoundCloud, and Spotify, and enjoy the music of Youngstown's sloppy pop act, Third Class, going strong since 1999. If the sense of humor on Bullskit is akin to your own, you might enjoy the inappropriate online comedy of Bullskit Productions, off-the-wall, quirky comedy from Ohio. Go to bullskit.com and enjoy the plethora of ridiculousness we have to offer. This episode is sponsored by the Speaking of Music Show, an audio editorial program that dives deep behind the curtain of music culture of yesterday and today. This episode is also sponsored by the Orange Avocado, raw, vegan, gluten-free desserts. If you would like to sponsor a few episodes of Nursery, email me at cloegrave@gmail.com. That's CHLOEGRAVE@gmail.com. It's cheap, easy, and you can sponsor as many or as few episodes as you like. If you are a fan and love listening to us and simply want to support, just click the donate button on thirdclass.net or bullskit.com. It all goes down the same tube.
Torpedo 4, I see.
Jerry? I just wrote
Hey, Jerry! Let's fire bombs off, okay?
Let's draw.
Yeah. No, let's fire